Welcome to the Bear in Global channel. Statement from the U.S. deputy that will create a shock effect. We can take control of Russia in just 3 days. NATO's pressure on Russia began to increase. The statements made increased the tension between East and West like never before. After Zelensky's meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden, big news came that would change the course of the war. Zelensky announced the news that would drive Putin crazy. Ukrainian army began to be completely renewed. The new systems tremendously strengthened Ukraine's defensive offensive capabilities. Putin is cornered, so they are using all the leverage they have. Russia again made statements about nuclear weapons and announced that new Russian troops would be deployed in the north. NATO and Russia may face each other in the north. The loss of air dominance of Russian army and the new air defense systems sent to Ukraine will completely change the fate of the war. It becomes impossible for Russian bombers to move. Russia had to focus on ground operations. Moscow gave the order to increase the number of soldiers in the army to 1.5 million. The war on the front continues unabated. As Russians attacked with rocket systems, Ukrainian army began to advance. As a result of attacks on Russian ammunition depots, explosions occur one after another. The Russian ammunition depot organized by the operations has been burning for 20 hours. The intensity of trench warfare has increased significantly. Tension is higher than ever. We know that President of Ukraine Zelensky went to USA in the past hours. While Zelensky and US President Biden were meeting, a very critical statement came from the US Congressman. Republican Adam Kinzinger of the U.S. House of Representatives urged the alliance to take action, saying the North Atlantic Treaty Organization could defeat Russia in just 3 days. As the dangerous escalation continued, such a rise in the U.S. Parliament was a sign of restless anticipation for the course of the war. Russian President Vladimir Putin talks about the long-standing problem with NATO and the Ukraine war with its expanding Western sphere of influence. Russian leaders playing the nuclear deterrence card, especially opposing the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO, received a great reaction from the United States. Whenever the Russian leader is cornered, he directly brings up the use of nuclear weapons. On the other hand, Putin does not want Ukraine to become a NATO member, but Putin does not want to make a deal with Ukraine. The whole world has been watching Putin's pressure on Ukraine for years. The Russian leader openly threatens many countries with military force for the expansion of his territory. However, with the emergence of a regular army resisting the Russian army, Putin began to have big problems. Experts are worried that the Russia-Ukraine war will spread to Europe, because if Russia attacks one of the Eastern European countries, all NATO member countries will directly enter the war with Russia. In other words, if Putin attacks a NATO member country, NATO's Article 5 will come into play. Kinzinger, a Republican from Illinois, made a harsh statement on social media when asked why NATO had not yet defeated Russia. "I hope this is a joke. For NATO, Russia will be like a 3-day operation. United States and NATO have never directly intervened in the Ukraine war. But we'll see what happens if Russia attacks NATO." Tensions rose after the announcement. After a short time, good news began to come from Ukraine. While the U.S.-Ukraine war continued, a new move came from the U.S. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced that they will provide $1.85 billion in military aid to Ukraine, including Patriot air defense systems. Blinken made a written statement regarding the aid to Ukraine, stating that USA will host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington to emphasize its support to Ukrainian people. Blinken said, "For the past 300 days, the Kremlin has tried and failed to take control of Ukraine. Now Russia's trying to neutralize it by attacking its infrastructure facilities and wants to use the winter months as a weapon." In this process, U.S. President Joe Biden announced a huge aid and support package to Ukraine against these unlawful attacks by Russia. Noting that they supplied weapons to Ukraine from the U.S. inventory for the 8th time with Biden's authorization, Blinken said, with the additional $1 billion of ammunition and critical equipment to be withdrawn from the U.S. inventory, Ukraine's self-defense is getting stronger. Capacity on the battlefield will expand further. Ministry of Defense also announced today that it will provide an additional $850 million in security assistance to Ukraine as part of Ukraine's Security Assistance Initiative. However, a Sense system will change the fate of the war. The $1 billion aid package to be provided from the U.S. inventory includes one Patriot air defense system, ammunition for HIMARS systems, 500 155mm howitzer shells, 30 mortars of different calibers, 157 armored vehicles, HARM missiles, precision-guided air missiles. It was also noted that there were 2,700 grenade launchers and other protection equipment. On the other hand, within the scope of Ukraine's security assistance worth $850 million, 45,152mm artillery shells, 20,122mm artillery shells, 50,122mm Grad rockets, and 100,125mm tank shells will be given. These defense systems are vital for Ukraine. The Patriot and other air defense systems sent can completely change the fate of the war. Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ihnat made statements about the systems sent and how these systems will affect the front line. Violation: this is a very important thing for Ukraine, because we have long dreamed of the Patriot as part of our strategy to further develop Air Force. The Patriot is a long-range weapon capable of hitting air ballistic targets up to 150 kilometers away. With these systems, we can drive Russian aircraft, bombers such as the Tupolev Tu-22 cubic meters, or the crews of enemy tactical aircraft from our borders to certain directions with these defense systems. According to Ihnat, Ukrainian army will be able to manage the new Patriot anti-aircraft missile systems quite easily. These Western systems are quite modern and most of them automated. Modern air defense systems don't need manpower and a lot of human control. So it's not that hard to train Ukrainian troops to use these systems. We will start using these systems. Ihnat added that Ukraine has a great need for a wide variety of air defense equipment and therefore they are ready to take everything they can offer Ukraine from Western partners. Russian military has been failing ground operations for months. With the new systems sent to Ukraine, Kiev will be able to control entire Ukrainian airspace. This situation will force the Russian army to organize ground operations. Therefore, Moscow took action to increase the number of soldiers. Russia wants to make up for its deficiencies by entering a long preparation period, because they have not been successful in ground operations for months and therefore they are attacking with rocket and artillery units. The failure of the ground units caused Russia to spend too much rockets, mortars, and ammunition. Russian army had no choice but to train its soldiers for a long time. The fate of the war changed completely. Western countries say they will continue to send support to Ukraine. We'll see what happens in the future. Tensions between the West and Russia continue to rise. We have come to the end of another video. In the coming hours, we will continue to convey the developments to you quickly and accurately. We continue to inform you objectively about the events. You can like the videos to support us. You can also subscribe to the channel to make it easier to follow new videos. I wish you all happy days. See you.